You're starting to try to be a musician or an artist or something like that because you want to make money, because you want to do a job. That's the wrong way. You have to do this because you love it. And it doesn't matter if you broke, you still gonna do it. You still gonna do it. I mean, I go out to jam sessions and I play regardless of whether I'm getting a check or not. It's about whether you have to love this thing, man. You have to love it and breathe it. And it's your morning coffee. It's your food. That's why you become an artist. Art is a mirror of society. You know.
Ejaculate, Sharon, the author, an image in the mirror.
There's an image in the mirror. I see myself. Written by a triangulate.
For a long time, I had always known out, right? It's one of those things where you always feel like I'm probably too young and too inexperienced to do it now, so I'll probably do it later on in life. A part of what sobered me up was a good friend of mine passing on and realizing that you live with this idea of unlimited time, but time is finite. And
Welcome to probably the most exciting episode of Friends Chat today. Today we are discussing 1, 2, 3 an image in the mirror. Since we started the channel, really we've been building up to this moment where we were asking what are your greatest achievements. Sharon really not being able to say what her greatest achievement is, as being like, come on, it has to be the. What's your greatest achievement?
my greatest achievement is, so you want me to say an actual
Yeah,
thing?
say an actual thing.
I think
that was a scapegoat. It's about people. It's like, don't have my trees.
my greatest achievement is actually finishing my manuscript.
Yeah, and so you probably have been eagerly anticipating this moment too, and it's such an exciting moment for us to be able to have a conversation with Sharon about her book, the process of writing this book. And so if you want to know a little bit more from the author herself, stick around! Jangalet S. Okong.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
It feels like an interview.
I feel like a celebrity.
A little bit.
Okay.
Just slightly.
We've all gotten a chance to read the book. We're not going to go too in depth into the book, but we really want to get Sharon's view on the process of writing the book.
Yeah.
And what it means right now to have it in your hands.
So I think one distinct moment I remember is the day I actually got delivery of the first 10 copies. I remember taking one of the books out, looking at it and feeling like, oh no, this is so surreal, and then putting it on my bookshelf and being like, this is a book amongst other books. And I was like, what does that mean? I was putting it in different places on my bookshelf and I was like, it's a book amongst other books. It's like, it's amongst its peers. As corny as that sounds, it's like, all of a sudden it felt like a lot of the writers I look up to are my peers are my peers, and I can own the title. So I think it sunk in that moment that I'm an author.
Wow.
I am an author.
You say this book is dedicated to the girl with fear on one side and courage on the other. And I kind of want to know when the fear ended and whether now we're at a point of courage, right?
So the girl with courage is definitely the more predominant character at the moment. And I was telling you this the other day where I feel like all of a sudden the world is open. And I feel less afraid because it's almost like as much as it's a novel and it's fiction, it still feels like it's your heart and everyone now has access to your heart and your mind. So I think I'm less afraid now. So I'm less afraid of perception, you know, as much as of course I want you guys to love it, but I'm comfortable with knowing that I love it and it's a story that I wanted to tell, which for me is a courageous act. So it's definitely, there's a lot more courage, but there are days where that duality just comes back, where it's now feeling like how am I meant to be an author? How am I meant to do this? How am I meant to do this well? But definitely a lot more courageous days on this side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for people who are wanting to know what the book is actually about,
Yeah.
can you give us a little like sneak
Teaser.
preview, little teaser
Yeah.
about what the book is about and like how the story came out?
The story is about these twins. So one's called Nyakale, and that's the one who grows up in South Africa, and the other's called Acheng, who grows up in Uganda. So Nyakale is growing up in South Africa as a Ugandan. In her stories, the whole concept of being an immigrant and the concept of home, interrogating her sense of belonging. She meets a boy, as we do in these stories, and it's also a story about love. And I think what I like about their love is Lwazi is also
That's
quite
my favorite.
complex. You know, he's an interesting character, so you learn about him but you don't learn too much about him, so there's a lot of spaces that I feel you guys will fill in for yourselves, but their love is really beautiful. Her friendship with Aisha is also so crucial to her life and how that evolves over time. And when you look at Acheng growing up in the village in eastern Uganda, and often there's gender roles in the village because it's very traditional, and seeing how she loves but hates. So there's this is my people, and I understand these experiences are important, but equally I feel restrained and I don't feel free. So there's this interesting tension. She experiences, she also meets a boy, boys. She also meets a boy, and at a point it's almost, there's a rivalry between her love for the boy and her love for this greater dream and her contribution. And
Why was it important for you, or I guess maybe for Acheng, to not want the life that Nyakale has in South Africa?
I think because the common theme that people normally place is this idea that the person in the village or the person in a small town is always yearning and is always sad and is always empty, right? So this concept that there's nothing good that happens in the village, and I think I intentionally chose to dispel that. I guess it's tough because you also don't want to romanticize like not having access to running water, but this was more, if those basic needs are there, can we conclude that the person in the city is always happier than the person in the village? And I think absolutely not, right?
So in terms of writing the book now, which character was the hardest to develop?
Yeah.
And like how much did you struggle to distance yourself from the character, to not write yourself in? And so how was that?
So this is not my story. It's a fictional novel. It definitely has certain passion points or certain ideas that I wanted to interrogate, but this is not my life.
Dad, mom.
This is not my life.
More reasons why.
But in terms of who was the hardest to write, Acheng was the hardest to write, purely because I didn't grow up in Uganda, right? And because I don't have a lot of close friends who grew up there. So you're constantly wondering whether I'm maintaining the integrity of that story, and whether if someone who actually grew up there read it, they'd feel like, okay, cool, this is possible, right? But I think I also had to free myself of that prison, right? And be like, I will read up on it, I will research it, I will try and make it factually, in the sense of the land rights thing, factually correct, but I'll also give myself the freedom to create a story around my imagination and what I would imagine it to be. So that was probably the hardest one. Nyakale was probably the hardest one not to write my views into. So because I have views about inequality, about the Rhodes Reform movement, about all these things, I had to consciously be like, okay, cool, that's too much of you, let's balance it with something else. So where the reader would feel like everything's on the table and you decide how you feel about it, you know. So that was hard.
What were the inspirational points that you drew from?
I think I've always been an observer of life. So I enjoy observing people. So for example, I walked to work for a year because I just like seeing people and just noticing people. But even when I'm in public, I tend to like overhear people's conversations.
No, it's called eavesdropping. It's called eavesdropping. It's not overhearing.
This obviously there.
And oh, it's inspiration.
Inspiration is a creative process.
So overhearing people's conversations, but also being intentional about watching people for me was what. Because if you read the book, you'll see that there are a lot of characters who are like, and Chimamanda says the same thing, where there are a lot of characters who are almost not the main character, but you feel like they have their place in the story, and it's weighty, you know. And that was important for me because I do have a lot of characters who in society are marginalized that I wanted people to understand the context behind those people and how those people get there, right? So that was definitely inspiration. My friends, some of you are in that book. I'm sorry, but conversations with friends and the friendships, of course, then I draw from my friendships to write on friendship. I'm inspired, I guess, by the stuff I read as well. So Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi is one of my big inspirations, and Paulo Coelho is also one of my other big inspirations. Yeah.
So there is a love scene. There's a love scene in the book, guys. This is something to look for. Well, if that's your stuff. My question is, writing that, was there a cautious air around it because of the eyes that you knew would be reading it? And how far did that stretch? And in terms of limiting where you can go, and are you out of that prison?
So I definitely think in writing it, because I thought it important to have it there in the story, and I was debating this, should I have it, shouldn't I? But I wanted to almost interrogate the idea that in a lot of spaces, especially in Christian spaces and religious spaces, the minute a girl has sex outside wedlock, it almost taints her beyond redemption, and that for me isn't a real story, right? So seeing how Nyakane is so nuanced, and yes, she does have sex outside wedlock, but seeing who she becomes post that, but also in her interrogation of herself in that moment, one of the things she says, sorry, spoiler alert, but she says, I'm not the girl, the one who should be here. And for me, so a thought that I have with regards to that is that there's no girl who is the type that should be there, but it's more layered than that. So and that's almost the school of thought that's in a lot of circles, that there's that girl and we are not those girls, but you know. So I wanted to dispel that, and it was hard for me to write because I mean it's not my experience. It's not my experience, but also because of the eyes, right? So and because it was bigger than the scene. When you read the scene, you'll see that it's a lot more poetic than it is about the actual act. Yeah. So the wording therefore wasn't hard to find because I knew that I wanted it to be poetic and almost like more the reader's in her mind a lot of the time in the process. So you know what she's thinking, and it's more about her mind and the intensity of the moment.
There's one thing that you would want them to get from the book, right? Like, what's a particular theme that you'd like them to explore further, far beyond just reading the book, that is important to you as the writer of the book?
Ability of stories to humanize people would be the theme I want people to take away, but also being a lot more curious about life and not almost assessing things at this level, right? So a lot of the characters, I show you their backstories and how they become who they are, and I think we often stop here in our interactions. So to interact with life more proactively would probably be the biggest thing.
And for somebody who wants to write a book, what would you say? What is your tips, your advice, practical advice for them to start thinking or getting into it?
I'd say start with a story outline and a character outline. It will change, it will evolve, but it gives you a framework that frees you to feel like you can do it. So that's what I started with. And then also, just write the book. So don't go back to chapter 1 after you've written it, just continue with chapter 2. Because what I found would happen for me is every day I see something else and I'm like, what if she walks and trips there? It could be good, you know? So because a lot of your writing is inspired by life, then you want to change things every day because every day you're a new person. You're like, maybe, I don't know. You know, so I found exactly that it's better to just write and finish and then go back. and read and edit and change and chop and change and all of that.
We are all beaming with pride. And I think as viewers of Friends Chat, guys, please go and get yourself a copy of this book. It's not even, I mean, this is just, it's revolutionary. It is written, it is for this time. It is for your story as well. And we're just so proud of you, Sharon. We're so proud of you. Guys, go get this book. Thank you so much for watching.
Buy a copy.
Yes, go get your copy. Exclusive books. It's available exclusive books now.
And perhaps you can get an autograph. So very soon we're going to give you more details about a giveaway of the book, An Image in a Mirror. But to be able to win the book, you have to subscribe to the channel, and very soon stay tuned so that you can know how to win.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in, guys.
Bye! We need a song. Image in the mirror. Come on. You're the music bed. Image in the mirror.
There's an image in the mirror.
I see myself.
Image in the mirror. Written by a junglet. It's written by a junglet.
Could that be me then?
I'm not sure.
Image in the mirror.